Hey, well, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Collision Live. Daniel here, and joined at the desk, as I always am, by the Iceman to my Maverick, Mr. Samuel David Camp. What is up?
Oh, not too much. Good to be with you, Daniel. I haven't seen the new Top Gun movie yet, but I've heard great things about it.
Yeah, I have a PhD in aesthetics, so my objective expert opinion, definitely 11 stars out of 10. Is it the best movie ever made? Not saying it is, not saying it's not, but it's definitely in the conversation. That movie is fantastic. So we'll probably touch on it again later in this show. But it's going to be back live. Last week we weren't live. We were projecting ourselves into the future because our crew was out on vacation. But we're back live, talk about crazy stuff going on in pop culture, kind of some interesting topics and things to get into. But before we do, I came across a news headline that I just got some chuckles out of, and I thought, hey, why do we do a show on pop culture and like entertainment, and why is that relevant? Well, I think sometimes it's because the line between reality and fiction is a lot closer than we think. So here's a news headline, if you guys haven't seen this, that just caught my attention. I said, "How to Murder Your Husband" writer found guilty of murdering her husband. So I don't know what the giveaway was for the cops, but so
yeah,
did you see any of this?
I didn't see this, but I imagine the prosecution really didn't need to do much. It's like turn to page 37 in the defendant's book, and you'll see that she in fact did use the candlestick in the parlor or whatever.
Which is just it's bizarre. I think that the actual thing was like an article or a blog she did, and it's just like this funny post about how to get away with, or maybe she didn't get into that part apparently because she got caught. But
that was going to be her next article.
Yeah, her follow-up, her sequel, she
didn't quite make it.
She didn't do enough research for that. But hey, it's a crazy world we live in. Sometimes fiction and reality blend together into one. So with that in mind, let's jump into the first segment of our show. We got pop culture news. So the first topic for us, our news story, the Ellen DeGeneres show aired its final episode. Kind of went out with a bit of a whimper. Kind of this beloved talk show host. Some of the news that came out with her over the last couple of years, that it's just sort of this toxic environment, and so it seemed like she kind of ran her course. But definitely an influential show. Another news story, Indiana Jones 5, because Harrison Ford is immortal and will be with us forever and continuing to solve riddles and find artifacts. They released the first kind of teaser image of the 5th Indiana Jones movie, which I think comes out next year, when Harrison Ford will be like 80 years old, because he is the GOAT, one of the best actors of all time. Kind of a lump article. We don't need to get into all the details of it, but a Star Wars celebration just happened this last 4 days, kind of over the weekend. Tons of Star Wars news, things that were released about new shows and upcoming movies and all that kind of stuff, which also coincided with the first 2 episodes of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, which just dropped, and I think the 3rd episode comes out tomorrow, and it rocks. So definitely excited for that. One of the things that wasn't on my bingo card for things I was looking forward to in pop culture is a new Winnie the Pooh movie, but not the kind of Winnie the Pooh movie you expect. So this is Pooh, Blood, and Honey, which is a horror film, a bloody, gory horror film, which, if you're wondering how this came to be, Winnie the Pooh just entered the public domain. So, hey, maybe copyright things and laws aren't a bad idea, because, hey, when it runs out, you get movies like this. So definitely won't be taking my kids to see that one in theaters. A movie I will probably be taking my kids to see in theaters, Garfield. I love Garfield. He's grumpy. I'm grumpy. So I he's sort of my spirit animal. But they cast Samuel L. Jackson in the upcoming movie where Chris Pratt will be Garfield, and Samuel L. will be Garfield's dad, who has never been shown. I hope he's just as grumpy as Garfield. So definitely looking forward to that. And the last kind of pop culture news story for this week, which actually just released like an hour ago or so, is the first teaser for the upcoming live-action Pinocchio, which is definitely like a drug trip of a Disney movie. It's like one of the weirdest Disney movies that they've made. But this movie looks really good. It's kind of following in the line of all these kind of live-action remakes. And Tom Hanks is Geppetto. And I don't know. They have like the CGI cricket and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I think it's a weird movie, but I'm excited to see what they have for this. But that's all we had this week in pop culture news. So any of these stories, any one in particular stand out to you?
Well, definitely the Star Wars. I think we saw the first trailer for Andor the new
Oh yeah, the
series.
Rogue One kind of
prequel to Rogue One, which I think is awesome. I kind of liked Rogue One. Like, I don't know, I feel like it kind of got mixed reviews, but I just thought it was kind of cool that it was like an adjacent to like the main storyline. I don't know. I found it really
I think
fascinating.
it might be the best of like the new era of Star Wars movies.
Definitely better than like the Solo and some of the others. Like, I think.
Yes, I'm excited for that show. I think it looks awesome. Again, it can all be. We don't have time to get into that in this episode, but I love the first 2 episodes. I think maybe I like the first episode more than the second one, but I'm definitely on board. I know there's been kind of mixed reviews on it, but I think it's great. So I'm, as a Star Wars fan,
I think with like a property like Star Wars, there's always going to be mixed reviews, but I think in general, I think the Kenobi series should be. I mean, so far, I think it's been quite good. So.
Yeah, and Ewan Mcgregor is also one of those guys that like age like a Tom Cruise, where like, he looks better now than he did when he was younger.
Yeah,
and he's just an awesome actor. So I definitely am on board for that. But hey, let us know in the comments any of those things you're looking forward to, any other news stories that we didn't get to. Always a lot going on, especially as we kind of move into the summer. There's going to be a lot of these sort of pop culture stories and movies to be excited about. But to jump into kind of our first topic, kind of our first. It's more of a general topic. It's not based necessarily on like a specific pop culture news story, but it was kind of inspired by, and we can maybe throw up the picture, the Don and Steve in the mornings. This is a morning radio show on Moody Radio. And they've actually picked up a couple of our collision materials and articles, and it's really good. They sort of spend an hour discussing it and kind of adding to it and critiquing it, or just sort of unpacking it a little more than we do in the article. So I always appreciate that. Go into that with fear and trembling, hoping that they don't just trash the article. Why this heretic Daniel Blackaby. But they had a recent one where they were talking about. A recent article we did on like Christian liberty. Again, that's a topic I think we talked about here on the show.
Yeah.
Kind of where do you draw the line, and like where do you not draw the line for like other believers, and how there is liberty and it's not legalist. And they had a really good, thoughtful discussion on that. But one of the things that came out, again, this isn't at all like a pushback to their. I agreed with all the stuff that they said. It's more that their conversation kind of sparked. A response that I see a lot, and it's sort of what do you do with the verse Philippians 4:8 when it comes to like entertainment and kind of Christians watching movies that maybe feature stuff that we would say like, isn't biblical or isn't consistent with that isn't biblical morality or so the verse again is a verse that a lot of us probably know, but I'll read it out. It says, this is Paul writing to the church in Philippi. It says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And this is probably one of the verses that I think probably more than any other verse that I get, that I see in like the comments of our movie reviews or just those discussions, especially the movies that are like a little more like controversial or like, a little more edgy or things that Christians need to kind of think through a bit more. This is kind of the verse that comes up, and sort of the idea of how can Christians like watch a movie like this that deals with this topic or this subject or in this way is when we're supposed to be thinking about these things, and obviously the stuff in this movie is not like the stuff in this in this verse. So I thought we could talk about that a bit, because I think it is an important verse, especially when it comes to like disagreeable movies or things that don't align. I think it's maybe a more nuanced verse than than sometimes we use it as. I think it can kind of get abused. But what are your sort of first impressions of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I feel like for whatever reason, entertainment seems to be under like greater scrutiny than like any other like avenue of a Christian's life. Like, I don't see many people applying this to like, let's say, the news that they consume, or the job that they have, or like I feel like in every other aspect of the Christian life, like they don't necessarily bring up this verse, but it's like as soon as entertainment enters the picture, it's like, oh well, let's think about this. Like, is this going to make me feel good and love Jesus more, or is it not? And they tend to put up these sort of walls to entertainment that I don't think you necessarily see sort of in any other like aspect of life. And so I think it can be kind of this sort of unfair targeting of entertainment choices. I think can often happen. And I think the other thing would just be that it's I think the last few words there says think about such things, and I do think some translations will say meditate on these things, and so I think there's also this idea of sort of like this marinating in particular ideas or virtues or what have you, and not necessarily like, I saw a movie, like I didn't necessarily like meditate on that movie or like watch it over and over and over again, but kind of parsing that difference.
Yeah,
between
and I do think it kind of like you were saying, like it's definitely like we should, whatever's good and true and right and lovely and all those things that he lists, like those are things that we should give our special attention to. I don't think the verse, and kind of I think one of the not abuses of maybe these like misuses of the verse is the idea that like Christians should only think of those things, like that, that anything that's not one of those, because there's like suffering in the world like that. Which one of those categories does like a tragedy or like a tornado rips through a town and devastation, like is that like lovely or pure or like is that excellent or praiseworthy?
Right.
It's like I think there are things that are important for Christians that they should kind of think about and approach and process. And obviously like a tragedy is different than like a raunchy comedy.
Sure.
It's not to be like careless with it, but I think sometimes this verse gets used as though like if you see a movie that is anything other than just sort of which
wholesome,
is wholesome, which is kind of why I think like we've talked about before, like there's sort of this misconception that like Christians can only watch movies and entertainment or books or music or whatever that like perfectly aligns with our biblical worldview. And people even critique us at the Collision for like even reviewing a movie that isn't wholly biblical, and just sort of this idea that like you can watch a movie you disagree with, like disagree with it and think through it. So I think that's kind of one of the I guess the misuses for that, like and I think maybe you could say like the whatever's true is maybe like the gateway to, not in like a bad way, but like to think about more like I think of like a gangster film, like a very not one that's just filled with this tons of like bad content, but just like a very heavy film that's like depraved. The characters are all awful and there's nothing really redeeming. Like I think there's lots of reasons why a Christian could watch like a film like that and like be edified by it, even if the content's bad. But like, I think like whatever's true, I do think like there is truth is also, it's not just like the rainbows and like
right.
Truth is also like the cross and like the suffering and the
right. Some truths are hard and some are difficult and some are uncomfortable, and so I think that can sort of span a broader selection of movies for sure. And I think like I think you mentioned this before we went live, is a movie like The Joker. There's a lot of movies that I think deal with important issues, and maybe they deal well with it, maybe they don't, maybe you agree with how they handle it, maybe you don't. But I think some of those things like mental health or social isolation, these sort of darker themes that sometimes get portrayed on screen, I think they are good to think about because it is a reflection of the reality that we live in. Like maybe you don't personally feel that way or deal with that in your life, but there's lots of people that do, and I think it can be, if nothing else, informative to how maybe you can relate to people better as a result of understanding an issue more, besides the fact of it just being an artistic expression of this issue.
Yeah, because even like one of the things I like to do, and especially when I'm kind of in a like a new, if there's some kind of idea or something that I've kind of been wrestling with and I'm kind of feeling strongly about kind of making an opinion on, like one of the things I usually do is like I'll go find a book that like is the opposite. Like if I was, I think apologetics should be more aesthetic. Like so I go find a book that's arguing for the exact opposite, and like because I think it's strengthened. Either it tells me, okay, this is why I'm going off the rails and I'm wrong, or else it like helps me process, okay, it's more balanced, or and not that like films just have to be like homework and like because that can get abused too. Like, I need to watch these raunchy movies because I need to like understand the world. Like, not that.
I wonder what Hollywood's up to.
Like there's tons of other. We've talked about that a bunch of times, like how you guard yourself and you're called to be holy, and so again, all that stuff still applies. But usually like a movie like The Joker or things, or even like horror movies with like fear or like just darkness, like the theme of darkness. Like I don't think it's kind of like this verse. Like I think sort of the general, that's sort of what we're aiming towards. And like, I think if you get out of whack and you're dwelling too much in like the darkness or the depravity of man and like sin, then it becomes an issue. Like, and then it kind of is, it's sort of steering you rather than this.
Well, I like what you said about this verse. Is really more the sort of, this is the trajectory or direction of your life. Like this should characterize where you're headed, and it doesn't mean that like you're never, contemplating things that don't align with that. It just means that like overall throughout time, like your life is headed in a direction that's true and pure and good and right and that kind of stuff, and not just like only containing those things, but that's the general direction of your life.
Yeah, and I think even especially if you're wise about it, like even like some of the more disagreeable, again, not like bad, like not like just pornographic stuff, but like just ideas and like worldviews and ethics and morality that is not consistent. Like some of that, I think even can like assist you in the Philippians, like just sort of seeing this the hopelessness of our world and kind of apart from God, and like the ethics and stuff, like can actually like help you better appreciate and understand like what the biblical life is called, what we're called to be, and kind of the need for some of that, and like it's sort of like ugliness helps you appreciate beauty. There's sort of that kind of godlessness helps you kind of understand like the church and how to should be kind of godly. And so again, we don't need to go more, I guess, deeper into that, but I do think that there is freedom for Christians to watch films and stuff that are like, I just call them disagreeable, like it's not biblical. And I think this verse isn't some kind of, it's not like a trump card to kind of throw, how dare you watch this movie because, you call that pure, and even like in the verses, like anything that is excellent, and this thing I learned, we were talking before we went on, like with Schaeffer, Francis Schaeffer, kind of one of his things is just sort of even like separating like the medium and the content from like the message,
craftsman,
and just like, hey, this is a film that I don't agree with anything that the worldview being presented, but like it is a good film, like it's well made. Like I think Christians can even appreciate like excellence in like craft, while also like condemning disagreeing with the stuff. Again, you gotta be wise with how you do that. But let us know what you guys think about that. How do you, like where's the balance for that? How do you approach some of these films, and not just films, like music and books and shows and all that kind of entertainment? Like, is there a line? Like, should Christians ever immerse themselves in worldviews and stuff that aren't what they believe, or is there actually kind of value in that? We'd love to have a conversation with you about that. But another conversation I would love to share with you is in our next segment of our show, Host Corner. So I thought I'm gonna move away from my recent string of food-related Host Corner. Maybe I'll bring it back in a couple weeks. But I thought I would use my minute to share with you. I know I said at the top of the show that Top Gun Maverick might be one of the greatest movies ever made. If it's gonna reach the top of the mountain, the movie you will have to knock off the pedestal is The Emperor's New Groove. One of the best movies ever made. This is it's become kind of this like cult classic. Like you just like throw out like a quote for this, and like you can tell who's sort of in the know, and people can quote. And like this entire movie, from the opening scene to the end of the scene, is quotable. Every line in this movie is hilarious. It's quotable. It's funny, and it's wholesome. There's nothing concerning in this movie, but even just the humor, like it's not like Angry Birds 2 kind of like just fart jokes and like real like potty humor. Like it's all clever writing, clever jokes, just very like kind of this understated, like kind of sarcastic humor, which I just think is hilarious. So if you have never seen The Emperor's New Groove, forget for a second that there's a sequel. Don't see that one, but definitely see the original, The Emperor's New Groove, one of the objectively greatest movies ever made, one of the best works of art, I think, in Western civilization. So go check it out. But I think you're an Emperor's New Groove person.
Beware the groove.
Beware the groove.
I think Carrie and I watched this not too long ago, just the two of us, like two adults, like just like it's been a while since we've seen The Emperor's New Groove. Like we should definitely watch that again. I would probably agree with your sentiment that is likely the best.
Because I really can't
the best
think
movie
of
ever made. Certainly the best cartoon, I think. Hands down.
Because I can't. I'm trying to. I was trying to think of like another movie that captures that same kind of clever humor. And
I think Understated is a great is a great term for it, because I mean it is and it isn't, but mostly it is understated, I think, because it's just the jabs and the little phrases that get thrown in there are just killer, and I just think it's fantastic.
Yeah, like pull the lever, wrong lever. It is brilliant. So if you have kids, if you don't have kids, hey, there's no shame in watching a great movie.
Squeakity.
Check it out. I think it's on Disney Plus. So definitely, squeakity squeak. So definitely check that out.
I love Kronk. Like he's just one of the greatest characters I think ever written.
Yeah, like really every scene in this movie is one that you can just go back and forth and quote. So check it out. Definitely one of the best things that cinema has ever produced.
Yeah.
But speaking of things that aren't good that cinema has produced, the recent Jurassic Park movies. These things are terrible. These things are not good. The next one comes out next week, I believe. And kind of an article based on these new movies kind of sparked the next kind of main topic for our show. There was an article that just dropped in Variety magazine, and the article is called "Hear Them Roar," and it was kind of highlighting the three female leads for the upcoming Jurassic World Dominion, which comes out I think next Friday. And I thought we could kind of get into this article, not just specifically the article itself, but kind of what it represents. 'Cause I think in some ways this article kind of like encapsulates so many of the things that it's representative of so many of the problems that we have in kind of modern movies, and even why I think that these recent Jurassic Park movies are just so inferior to the great Steven Spielberg kind of original ones. So I thought we get it, and then I think it does kind of lead to a wider discussion of just what is the role of movies and kind of sort of as they begin to blend more with the message and the sort of more activist kind of bent to it. So there's a couple of quotes. Again, I think the article is it's in a Variety magazine. You can read it on the website. It's worth reading just as because I think there's a lot of stuff to get into with it. But I did pull out a couple kind of quotes and stuff, and then we can get into this. So one of the things where one of the characters is saying, so when I read the script, it wasn't about color, sex, or anything. It was about finding the actor who could be the next Indiana Jones. And this, she says, pointing to Wise, who's the new black actress introduced in this upcoming movie, says happens to be the actor. And putting aside the fact that there will never be another Indiana Jones, we need to not go on that. But just sort of highlight, hey, it's just about the actress. It's not about kind of any other factors. And then kind of later, the article says, but there have been haters. A small but vocal group of trolls criticized the casting as woke. As soon as you put a black woman, a woman of color, or a person of color on screen, it has to whoever a connotation. Wise says, whether they know the story or not, I'm inherently politicized. I know that. Dern also pushed back strongly on the woke claim. So this is... sort of pushing back about the fact that it's just about the movie, it's about the characters, it's not about all these other factors, which just really stands out because the entire article, everything else in the article is the kind of emphasizing the exact opposite of that. Everything else is, this is a little island of, hey, it's not about that, it's not about the sort of, agenda-driven message stuff.
Now let's get back to the agenda.
No, let's get back to the agenda. And there is this is sort of one, again, there's a bunch of stuff in there in the article to pull out. But one of them that I think does kind of bring it to mind is it says it was just as imperative that Kayla's, again the new actress or new character in the movie, that Kayla's bisexuality be clearly defined. It's important to continue to expand and diversify what sexuality looks like, what it means. Wise explains. It's the same thing when you're coming at conversation about diversity and representation in general, which is at some point it has to be so well woven, so matter of fact that you feel it in the fiber and the truth of the character. And again, we're not necessarily going to get. We haven't seen the movie, not just this movie, but the article just, I don't know, it stood out to me because it's, on the one hand, there's hey, it's not about, an agenda. It's not about making a point. It's just about the characters and what feels right. And, but then kind of the article itself kind of goes through it starts off talking about how it's so great to have these characters as sort of to assault the patriarchy and strong female, why that's important, and casting people of color, and then having the sexuality be very very well defined and out there and not something subtle, because you need to kind of set a standard, kind of change the narrative. And so basically it's It is when it's not.
It's where you slam your hand down and say, we didn't want dinosaur movies to not talk about sexuality. Come on.
What fun is it to watch a T-Rex eat people? We want to know about
we want to know their sexual orientation before they die.
What is that dinosaur sexual bent? But
yeah.
So I don't know, because we could. So again, and I think there is, in one sense, and we've even seen this with the Kenobi show, like there is definitely trolls that like because people have trolled like the Kenobi for it because they have that new black actress like the Inquisitor, and it's like woke casting, and it's like, well,
which I like. If you watch it, I don't see that.
Yeah,
like, I'm just like it's a Sith or Inquisitor character that happens to be black, and I just that's the thing. To me, this just can be so frustrating. It's like you can have casting that is diverse and that's great, and it's it's everything that everybody wants. That doesn't inherently mean that it's like we're doing this solely because like this person is a person of color or whatever, or it's a woman. And so I think like, I don't know, it's just very frustrating to me when it's like, it's a movie with characters in it. Like, get over the fact that some don't look like you. And I think that should be sort of a standard from the get-go. But on the other hand, it's like this article sort of, and full disclosure, I haven't actually read the article except for what Daniel just read, but I think that sort of thing of like, well, we need to like make sure that like this person's sexual orientation is like front and center, and it's very important that these things sort of be there, or we really had to like change the color of this actor because it was time. Like these sort of things I think they just feel very manufactured and very pandering, and I think that's when you get into this activism and real messaging in movies. And I think these sort of things are sort of the polar opposite of what like majority of Christian movies are. It's like Christian movies starts and ends with like the agenda, and so there are other movies that are like, let's say the woke opposite are starts and ends with the agenda, and it's like they're not great movies. Maybe they're not great acted or whatever, but it's like, but look at all the things that we checked, all the boxes that we did. And it's like, isn't it great? It's like, well, you had a terrible, like it was a bad movie, poorly acted and scripted, not well. And it's like, you're no different in my mind, entertainment wise, in like a Christian film that's like this cheesy, like terribly done movie trying to be
because I think this sort of this
sorry new, that's the end of my
your rant hashtag end rant, but I do think you're right, like the we tend to, when you think of like agenda driven movies and stuff, like I think most like Christians, what comes to mind is like this art, like the sort of the woke and like the Hollywood, but like it's like, Christians do the same thing. Like our faith-based films are probably the most agenda-driven films in cinema. Like they're almost entirely well, we're making this, we do this character because we want to explore this and be evangelistic, and our goal is to this, and here's our Bible study material that you can take after the show, and like so like it is across both. It's not just like one kind of group of people that are doing that, but it did raise to mind, or at least for me, like it's like, what is the role of, like, because it seems like in one sense, like art and like movies and stuff like have always been kind of prodding like the end of like the fringes, and like trying to explore new things and challenging things, and like but just sort of this idea now, though, it seems like it just seems a little stronger recently, where it's like hey, we're gonna make a movie about dinosaurs, but like the goal is not necessarily, hey, isn't it fun to watch dinosaurs eat people? Like it's like, well, we also need to like deconstruct gender norms, and we need to like
the patriarchy,
we need to kind of represent this group of people, and then we need to like deal with this and make sure that they're covered. And it's almost like everything, it's like it's trying to change society, or like it's almost like movies to become like just like a vehicle for this sort of activist, whatever the activism is, like I think or worldview pushing or religious or whatever, like rather than just like this is a movie. It's just purely entertainment. Like, like I said, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I don't know that you're ever going to get to the pure entertainment, because I think, movies are made by people, and people have sort of ideas and worldviews, and that I think invariably gets sort of woven into the movie, at least to some degree. But I do think, I over the weekend I got to read Art in the Bible by Francis Schaeffer. And he was sort of talking about, he had this line about, sort of some of the artwork that's done by like the hippies, and he was sort of denigrating like the hippie art and the bohemian art. He's like, you don't have to worry about that because although like, it's totally, the wrong message or like something that you completely disagree with, it's sort of the message of the world. You don't have to worry about it because he said like, it's not good art. Like it's actually quite bad. And so he wasn't concerned about the messaging of this art. And I think in some ways like I feel like what happens when it gets to be too agenda driven. It's like everyone can tell. It's like this movie has an agenda and it kind of ceases to be like a cinematic experience. It ceases to be a great work of art because it's like when the agenda is so like naked and like the messaging is just so like on the nose that it's just sort of like, oh, okay, this is a big spectacle about whatever social issue you want to plug in. And so I think that like detracts from the art side of it. I think the things that you should maybe look out for is like the really well done and well executed movies that do have that sort of subtle messaging. Like I think if you package it better, it'll be more accepted. Like, and that I think goes for both. Like better Christian films, I think you can get that message in if the vehicle that it's packaged in is actually well done. And the same with some of this, more activist, social justice, whatever. If that's packaged in a better way, I think they can be more effective in getting that message across.
Because it can come across very like propaganda. Like even if like what it's supporting is something that's good. Like Christian faith-based films, like I think can almost be like spiritual propaganda. Like, even though I agree with the message and I'm a Christian and I want that message spread, but like just it becomes less of like this is just a story,
right?
And it's more of like this is a message. Like this is we're making this character because this character is going to accomplish this, and like it is very agenda driven. And I don't know. Like, the thing that came to mind, because I was kind of thinking like like is it inevitable like the films like because I push back a little bit that like every film has a message and like or that the message is always some like, agenda driven thing and I think I don't know maybe just as someone that's like written stories and like kind of gone through that creative process. Like I think it's more complicated than just sort of the way we think of it. But like we said, like Top Gun Maverick was a wonderful, awesome movie. And like I remember like I can't remember a time like I left the theater where people were just that amped up and like just everyone is just pumped up. And I was thinking of like, and I know people have already tried to kind of like politicize it and stuff, but I think like any like serious person that's just not forcing that in there, like I think part of why that movie has kind of just united everyone and like that we like it is like because it doesn't really have a message. Like it's very like pro military and pro America and all these things, and which for some people I guess maybe is a problem, but like so like it has some of that it represents, but it's not like it is purely just like, hey, enjoy yourself. This is cool. Appreciate how cool this looks. Like we're not going to deconstruct how you think. We're just going to entertain you.
And I think the fact too, it's like it's a theatrical, at least from what you've told me, it's a theatrical experience, and like it's made to be experienced in a theater, and part of like, so it wasn't done with with people sitting on their couches and their laptops like going to be watching this like what I'll probably end up doing when because I'm not going to make it to the theater, but and I think that's what, and I think like Dune is sort of the same way. Some of these, basically any Villeneuve or Roger Deakins film, it's made sort of art first, and then you can tell art being like both the visuals and also the storytelling, and I think I just think those movies stand out when it's put up against more sort of, let's call it commercial entertainment. That's like I would put any of like the Marvel movies, any superhero movie, any Fast and the Furious, or are they still making Transformer movies?
Unfortunately,
no,
I think we are.
Sick. Any of those movies, and there's like so sort of these big like mega blockbusters, and I think it also reveals just sort of the religious aspect. I think that has sort of taken hold with some of the, let's call it, for lack of a better term, woke side of business and Hollywood. I think there is sort of this religious adherence, and I think those movies are probably getting worse and worse as a result of that, and it's just interesting to see.
I think the like the actual story is sort of becoming like it's just getting kind of sucked up in like the agenda-ness, like, or driven part of it, or the message,
Yeah.
Like it's just usually this leads to, that's why propaganda is always bad art, because it's not really a story. And I do think that maybe a distinction to make, which I don't think a lot of people make, is like there's a difference, at least to me, the way I understand movies and stories. Like there's a difference between like themes and a message. Like I think most films or most stories that are good have themes. Like the original Star Wars has themes of generational and like tons of different themes and faith and all that kind of stuff, and the establishment and rebellion and thing. Like most things have themes, but to me that is different than like Top Gun has themes of coming together and generation forgiveness, and I think you kind of need to have like the things you're dealing with in stories beyond just like this is sort of nonsense string of events that happen, but like that is different than like a message where it's like, hey, this is not just sort of what's coming out in the story, the characters, like this is what we have, and we're going to just use the character to communicate what we want to preach, and what we want to, we want to push that society today needs to look more like this, so we're going to put all these characters in and or challenge this, or we need to like I think that's even why the sequel Star Wars movies, like why I just don't connect with them, is like Star Wars has always had big themes. But the newer ones seem more like they have like messages. Like it's all about like kind of deconstructing what and like subverting things and trying to push this sort of new way of thinking about a society. And I don't know. To me, that the message part of it, I think, can be avoided. And I think I think that's even like the solution for a lot of like the faith-based films is like still deal with like these themes, still deal with stories and redemption and faith and stuff, but like do it in a way that's not just like, this is like our visual like movie version of like a track that's just like kind of pushing. But let us know what you guys think. Is it do movies have to have these sort of agenda-driven messages? Is that kind of is it avoidable? Because even a lot of the people that are like push back against that is like are doing, like you said, doing the same thing, very reactionary. We're not going to be like Hollywood. We're going to tell stories that represent this worldview. And it's like, well, we're kind of doing the same.
They're just as bad, but on the other end of the spectrum.
It's still propaganda, but it's propaganda you can agree with. So I don't know. I think there is definitely a line in there. And again, this article, encourage you to check it out. Actually, I do think it just represents even a broader scope beyond like the specific things, like why so much of like recent movies and stuff just aren't connecting with me. I think it is very much sort of this new like cinema is a vehicle for activism rather than a vehicle for storytelling. So let us know what you guys think of that. But the final last segment of our show this week at the Collision, encourage you again, if you're just like a video only or listening to us on the audio podcast, we have a website, thecollision.org. Got a lot of like written reviews and articles and stuff that we're always doing there. We're about to launch a newsletter next month, so we'll have more information about that. But we do have several new reviews that have come out in the last little bit. Again, we pre-recorded last week, so we've had a lot of different things coming up in the last couple of weeks. So three specific ones to give a shout out to: Downton Abbey, A New Era, Chippendales, Rescue Rangers, surprisingly good movie, and again, Top Gun, one of the greatest movies ever made. So definitely check those out. We got video reviews on our YouTube channel, got written reviews up on our website. So I encourage you guys to check that out. Next week, I don't think we are going to be here.
We're not going to be here.
We're not going to be here
physically.
We'll see. We might pre-record something, or we might just take a week off and come back better than ever, stronger, well rested, to take on all the collisions of culture. So we'll again keep your eye open for news for that. But anything else going on?
I think that covers it.
So hope you guys had a great kind of long Memorial weekend. If you guys have kids, enjoy the start of your summer.
For the first 2 days.
Yeah, for the first 2 days, if you're itching to get your kids back to that daily, weekly babysitting. But go see Top Gun if you haven't seen it. It's good. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, do all that stuff you know to do. But thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe and continue to collide through the world for Christ.